All right, French 1, this is one of the more difficult concepts that we've done as far as the notes videos at home and things like that, so make sure that you're paying attention here and giving it your all. This is a pretty complicated grammar concept, and I really want you to understand it, but it's kind of hard when you can't bounce ideas back off me. If you don't understand a certain aspect of it, though, please write that down as far as what your question is, so that as soon as you get to class, you can talk to me about it. This concept is known as the imperative. As far as when I just say, hey, we're going to talk about the imperative today, most people don't know what that means. So right here, the first question in the imperative is basically commands, when you tell somebody to do something. And you actually have seen imperative sentences in class, specifically at the very beginning of the year, whenever we learned how to say things like go to the board and open your books and things like that. So you've seen them, you just haven't really known how to form them or how they're different and things like that. They're different from your normal sentences because instead of starting with a subject, such as je or tu or il, they start with a verb. And we actually do this the same in English with our commands. Whenever you tell somebody to do something, like when your parents or somebody at home is bossing you around, go to your room. Go is a verb, it's an action word. Take out the trash. Take is an action word. So instead of saying you or he or another subject, commands always start with a verb. In French, they specifically start with a verb in the tu, vous, or nous forms, and we're getting it into why there's three different forms here in just a second. They never start with the je form, they never start with a ils or elles form, they never start with an il or elle form, only tu or vous or nous. So for our first sentences here, you've got a typical French sentence over here in tu prends un sandwich. Looks like a normal sentence. Starts with a subject, followed by a verb that agrees with that subject, and then the rest of your sentence. This sentence just means you are having a sandwich. Pretty basic. If, however, I take away the subject and instead I start my sentence with the verb, and then we just have the having part and we're missing the you part, this becomes a command. So instead of you are having a sandwich, a statement, it becomes have a sandwich. Now, the other thing I need you to realize is why it says to one person here. In French, when you're commanding one person versus a group of people, the verb looks different. So the reason why it can be in either the tu or the vous form is if you're commanding just one person to do something, in this case have a sandwich, then your verb is in the tu form, just like it is here. If I wanted to have a whole group of people have a sandwich, I would say prenez with an EZ at the end and put it in the vous form. Prenez un sandwich would mean have a sandwich, but it would be the same command for a group of people instead of just one. Same thing happens on this next line. You have your typical sentence here. Subject is vous, verb is regarder, it agrees with vous, le tableau. This is a statement of y'all are looking at the board. If, however, you take away the subject and you just start with the looking part, all of a sudden it becomes a command. Regarder le tableau means look at the board. And because regarder is in its vous form, you can tell that I'm telling a group of people, like a class at school, to regarder le tableau, look at the board. So the keys to understanding commands are very simple. You start with a verb, and depending on whether you put it in the tu or the vous forms, it's going to depend on how many people you are commanding or bossing around. It's that simple. Now, there is one other option. I mentioned that if you start your sentence with the nous form. So let me give you one more example here. Nous jouons au volley is a very typical sentence. You've got your subject here with nous. You've got your nous form of jouer, which is to play. And you're saying the statement of we are playing volleyball or we play volleyball. If, however, you start the sentence with a verb, just like we did with those commands, but you put it in the nous form, it almost becomes like a suggestion. Instead of telling somebody, you play volleyball, play volleyball, and putting it in the tu form or the vous form, depending on whether you're telling one person to play volleyball or a whole group, it becomes more of a suggestion and an invitation. We've actually seen this before, but we didn't talk about it a whole lot. So, jouons au volley starts with a verb, but this time it's in the nous form. It's a way of inviting somebody, hey, how about we all go do this? So in this case, jouons au volley means let's play volleyball. It's kind of a command, but it's not quite as direct. You're including yourself in it by putting it in the nous form, because remember, nous means we. And if you're bossing yourself around just the same as everybody else, it's a little bit more friendly and more of a suggestion instead of an actual, this is what you or y'all need to do. So having said that, of course, we need to talk about some of the exceptions and some of the other little weird things that comes up. First of all, you can make a command negative. Think about it in English. Sometimes people don't tell you to talk, but they tell you not to talk. Just like every other sentence in French, if you want to make something negative, you fill in a ne pas around the verb. Keep in mind, though, that because the verb is at the beginning of the sentence now, you'll put your ne and pas around it at the very beginning of the sentence. So instead of parle en classe, talk in class, which is not something I ask you to do often, it becomes ne parle pas en classe, which is don't talk in class. And again, I'm saying this to one person because you can see that the verb is in the to form. Or is it? Did you notice? It's an ER verb, parler, but it doesn't end in an ES. That brings us to our exception here. There's a very strange rule, one of those things that's just meant to like drive language learners crazy, that says that, get ready for this, if you use the to form of an ER verb in a command, you don't add the S like normal. Did you get all that? Basically what it comes down to is normally when you do the to form of an ER verb, let's take manger right here for example. You drop the ER and your song again for ER verbs is S. The S is the to form, so that's what you would normally add. But for whatever weird reason, there's a teeny tiny exception to command rules in that even though you're starting your sentence with your verb, even though it tells you to put it in the to form if you're just telling one person to eat their vegetables, there's a weird rule that says that in the to form of ER verbs and commands, you don't actually put the S on the end like you normally do. So technically the correct sentence is this one right here, mange les légumes. It's a tiny little rule. If you forget about it, people are still going to understand you, but they will probably put at least one question on the final about it, just because it's something that if you're an A+ student, you're going to kind of pick up on that and start recognizing it. Other than that, though, everything's pretty much follows the rules to a T. So let's talk real quick about how you can form a command. If you decide you want to boss somebody around, it's really, really simple. Whatever you're going to tell them to do, you start your sentence with that verb, and you put that verb in either the to, the vous, or the nous forms based on how many people you're bossing, or if you're including yourself and making it a suggestion. I know just telling you these steps really doesn't help it sink in, so I thought we could practice a little. Now, unlike normal, when I have you practice and then we check it in class, I figured we'd go ahead and check the answers here together. Now, do yourself a favor and actually pause the video and give this a try. At least give the command or no sentences a try. All I'm asking you to do there is decide, is this sentence a command or no? Hopefully by now you actually paused the video and gave it a try, and you're not just sneakily writing down the answers here in a second, because it won't help you on the test if you do it that way. Basically what you need to look at when you're trying to decide if something is a command is what starts off your sentence. Does it start normal with a verb? Because if it does, that ain't a command. Or with a subject, rather. Does it start normal with a subject? Because if it does, it's not a command. It's just a normal sentence like, I'm eating a hamburger. If, however, it starts with a verb, there's no je, there's no tu, there's no person that this whole sentence is about, ladies and gentlemen, you have a command. In this case, this is one from earlier in the school year, ouvrez vos livres. Ouvre is the verb for to open. It's in the vous form here, so somebody is telling a group of people to open your books. All right, take a look at number 3 then. Look at this first word. Just so happens to be a verb. That means that it's a command. In this case, this is the to form of the verb faire, so you're telling one person to do their homework. Fais les devoirs. Finally, take a look at number 4. Hopefully you've picked up on this by now. It starts with the word to, and that's a subject. Commands always start with verbs, so this must not be a command. Alrighty, if you got through that section, now we're going to do a little practice actually writing these sentences. Before you pause the video, though, if you're actually being a good student and pausing the video, let's talk about a sample together here real quick. If you want to tell somebody to have the pizza, and you want to write that command in French, it actually translates pretty closely word to word. You want to start with the verb for to have. Now, if you can't remember the verb for to have, you might need to look it up, but the word for having food or drink is prendre. Now, the important thing is about commands is that they start with the verb, we've got our verb, but that you put it in the correct form based on how many people you're bossing around. So in this case, I put in parentheses that I just want you to tell one person to have the pizza. Picture you and a friend sitting there at a restaurant and them saying, hey, what's good here? Oh, have the pizza. It's awesome. Because you're just talking to one friend, when you start your sentence with the verb prendre, you'll need to put that in the to form. Remember, with commands, your only options are to if it's one person, vous if it's more than one, and nous if you're making the suggestion of let's all go ahead and do this. I'm not just bossing you, I'm saying let's all do it together. In this case, like I said before, the to form because you're talking to one person. After that, just a matter of finishing up the sentence with the pizza. Prend la pizza means have the pizza. And it's have the pizza if you're telling one person to have the pizza. At this point in time, it would be really good for you to try practicing on your own. It's a really difficult concept, so go ahead and pause the video, see how 6 and 7 go, come back when you think you got the right answer. Alrighty, so hopefully you had a chance to pause the video. Let's talk about these last two and get you done for the day. If you want to tell somebody to eat the vegetables, the first thing you need to remember is the actual verb for to eat, and that's the word manger. Once you know that you're starting your sentence with manger, you need to know which form to put it in. Again, when you do commands, it's either in the to, the vous, or the nous form. In this case, it tells me that I'm talking to a group of people, 2 people here, which means that when I write the verb manger at the beginning of my sentence, I'm going to have to conjugate it in the vous form, which means you have to remember that it's an ER verb, and for ER verbs in the vous forms, you drop your ER and you add an EZ. It's a lot to remember. That's why this is a difficult concept. After that, you just got to include the words for the vegetables and you're good to go. Manger les légumes means eat the vegetables. If you wanted to do number 7 and say, let's go to the movies, the first thing you need to realize is that we're actually not starting with the verb here. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to start with the verb in French, but hopefully that'll clue you into noticing that this is more of a suggestion. You're not telling 1 or 2 other people that you guys need to go do this. You're including yourself in it. You're talking about what we need to do. So you need to put it in the we form when you write the word for go. Now, again, you first have to actually remember the verb for to go, which is aller. And then once you've got that, you have to remember the nous form of aller because you're suggesting that we all go to the movies. So if you forgot, the nous form of aller is allons. And then if you want to say let's all go to the movies is au cinéma. Hopefully this video helped you pick up the imperative at least a little bit. Don't worry, you're going to practice it a lot in class. And definitely write down any questions you have so we can get right to work when I see you next.